Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're talking about effective communication, what real, true Christian communication is. We are opening those phone lines as well here on The Next Right Thing with Debbie Georgianni. That number is 877-757-9424. Good morning, Debbie and Adam.
Well, good morning, Keith. And we are sitting about 6 feet from each other in the Houston studios of Guadalupe Radio Network. Super excited to be here. Adam is getting ready to fly from Pittsburgh to Houston, but so he is joining us by phone. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Keith. How are you guys?
We're doing well.
Splendid.
We're doing well. There's a lot of humidity here in Houston, but we're doing well. You know, Keith and I are from Arizona, so we get very little humidity in Arizona. So, but we're loving it. We're having a fabulous time. Can't wait for you to get here, Adam, for the summer speaker series, the Spirit World Live on Saturday. And we're very excited about that. Folks can still get tickets, by the way, if you can drive in, fly in, walk in, go to grnonline.com. But we're talking about effective communication today, and we thought we could open up the phone lines, Adam, and Keith is going to stay with us. And the number to dial, and here's what the question we're going to ask you. Do you really practice, and are you very intentional about having true communication with those around you? Now think about it for a moment, because everybody's addicted to these gadgets, right? So we hide behind these gadgets and we shoot off texts and we post things and we have these chats that, you know, there's no eye contact, there's no real effective exchange of information and ideas. Yeah. And we want to know, how do you do it? So if you're listening right now and you could weigh in on this, Tim is ready to answer your call at 877-757-9424. Adam, what do you think about this idea that we really need to practice true, authentic, effective communication in a Christian way, because it's lacking in these days, as it really is?
Yeah, I learned a lot about, communication and training to be a therapist in graduate school, and then got to, try to apply those ideas and just, being a genuine human being in communication for a number of years in the prisons where communication can be challenging. So it's important for everybody. A lot of us don't really learn how to really listen or how to be genuinely present, when we're in a conversation with another person. So, there's a few things that I picked up in that training that would be helpful. And one of those is to not just be waiting to speak. So you're not just waiting to say something and you've got that, loaded and you're ready to go and you're just waiting for that quiet moment where you can blast the person with your opinion. Trying to, if you're going to give the person enough time and space and attention to be in a conversation with them, genuinely try to see where they're at, where they're coming from. And one way to do that that's really powerful, it seems simplistic, and you don't do it in every interaction, but that is to say back to the person what you're hearing them say. Mm-hmm. So if it's a really important conversation, and they've communicated something to you, it's like, it sounds trite, but what I'm hearing you say is, and then repeat it back to them the way you're understanding it. And that gives them a chance, number one, to realize you actually listened to what they said. And then number two, to tell you, no, actually, this is what I meant.
Right.
And that draws the two people closer together because the person had an opportunity to be heard and then had an opportunity to kind of amplify and clarify what they said, and then you can move on to sharing. Mm-hmm. And then the second thing that I think is more of a Christian concept is, instead of us judging, because from a Christian perspective, God judges. It's not our place to judge. We're not God. So to share, yes, we have a moral imperative or requirement to share the truth and share, God's law and express that, but not in a condemning human level. So, oh, you're not as good as me because you're not following this rule. It's not like that. We're all sinners, and we need to remember that. And, in charity, we do need to share what God's rules are, but not in a way that's kind of dismissive and personally judgmental,
Right.
because that just shuts the communication down.
Right. But Adam, we're in a world today where it's so reactionary. I mean, people are ready for a fight. There's an agitation, and that just seems to be there underneath the surface. And I personally feel that it has to do with the fact that we're not making that eye-to-eye contact, that taking that time like you're talking about. We're not, it's interesting because you're going to see, Adam, when you travel here to Houston and we do the Spirit World in the Houston studios of Guadalupe Radio Network, it's a whole different feel. Like Keith and I are sitting 6 feet apart. It's a whole different feel than when we virtually do the morning show. But we've made good use of technology. But oftentimes, just in a social setting or when people are interacting, and I know there's a big, huge interest in text dating now. I mean, people are having their whole relationship revolve around texting. To me, that is just it makes no sense. I mean, there's tremendous room for error and things to go wrong, and now you have it in writing, which is just is terrible. So, what do you say to all that, Adam? Because I mean, unless we put down the gadgets, and we've got gadgets in front of us. We need it to work and pretty much survive sometimes. But what do you say to people to practice it on a regular basis? I mean, let me just answer, because we do have the phone lines open. Let me just give the number again. If you have really mastered this, if you have practiced the art of effective Christian communication, would you please share it with us? 877-757-9424. But Adam, Marty and I, my husband, we are just adamant about making sure that we don't talk to each other as we're passing each other in the hallway, or passing one's in the kitchen and one's passing through the family room. We try really hard to stop and take a moment. And when you think about it, Adam, it only takes a couple seconds. But I think so many of us are having relationships where we're just running through life and trying to communicate as well. What do you say to all that? Like, give us the first steps, the next right thing.
Well, I think the first step is just what you said, which is not only to take a moment, not pausing and waiting for your turn to speak and ignoring the other person, but taking a moment to really take the person in, take in what they're saying, what they're doing, how do they look. And the second part of that, and this is the scary part, is to be vulnerable and, be open to sharing how you genuinely feel. It's not that you have to have the deepest, interaction ever every time you interact with a person. But I think what the texting relationships have robbed us of is practicing being genuinely together as human beings. And so what you end up with, I think in most cases, is a very brittle and shallow relationship that is easily broken and discarded. It's not a deepening relationship that can weather misunderstandings and confusion and, maybe you're having a bad day. If it's as shallow as just texting, it's probably as easy it is to begin it, it's easy to end it. So practice just being present as flesh and blood human beings and giving people a moment to be themselves and being vulnerable enough to be yourself. It sounds simple, but when you haven't learned that growing up, it can be so challenging that the person just never even tries it.
Right. So let's ask Keith, because I know Keith's going to have some announcements for us. But, Adam, you and I, we didn't grow up with the texting world. But, Keith, you did.
Slightly. I mean, I grew up, I'm a geriatric millennial, so I grew up with those Nokia phones where, you'd play Snake, and then texting cost money to do.
Okay.
So I was kind of in the middle of that where, I usually would talk on the phone, but, obviously nowadays, that seems like, emoticons, so romantic. emojis, right? No, that's not the case. And, this whole topic of communication really has hit home for me because, believe it or not, I'm not that great at communication. Not communication at all.
Wow.
And it's something that I have to actively work on because, I'm a people pleaser.
Okay.
And so I want to say yes to everything, but that's not really all the time how I feel. Sometimes I don't want to do something. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And then I drag my feet, maybe procrastinate a little bit. And that doesn't really work too well in a lot of our relationships. So
Right. So let me ask you a question. This is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So do you prefer somebody to communicate with you by text or to pick up the phone the old-fashioned way and make a call?
It depends. If it's like, hey, can you pick up, this thing at the grocery store? I'm like, yeah, I can do that. But if it's like a conversation, like a one-on-one conversation, I don't want to do it over text. Like it's got to be over phone.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's really good. Adam, I know we're going to hit the pause button in just about a minute, but what do you say to that? I mean, how do you feel? Because, I have to tell you, I've gotten really used to texting. I love it. What do you think, Adam?
Yeah, obviously texting is super convenient and fast and easy. But again, the more important relationships in life, I think they require more.
Yeah.
To form a deep friendship requires more. Again, I think we end up never being vulnerable with each other and sharing what we genuinely are. It's kind of like, the idea on the internet that you share pictures of your most glamorous moments and never your pictures of mediocrity or having a rough day. And you get this false version of yourself that's always happy, living in abundance and ever, and it's not reality. And so you end up exhausting yourself, holding up this mask of I'm perfect and beautiful and happy and better than everybody else. But in truth, that's not how human beings feel all the time.
Right.
And so I could see that leading to a lot of depression, in your interior life. It could be exhausting. I think this false self kind of world that we're creating it's not healthy. And humans, we haven't evolved to interact this way. We've evolved to interact face to face.
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's going to lead to
Problems.
feeling empty.
Yeah, loneliness too. Okay, so we're going to send it. Well, let's hit the pause button. Keith's got some announcements for us. Adam, hang on. Let me give the number again: 877-757-9424. If you want to weigh in on this topic of the next right thing of effective Christian communication. But we'll hold it there. And Keith, take it away.
Wow. Yes. Hey, real quick, go to YouTube, go to search GRN online and like and follow and subscribe, as well as all the other great radio stations out there, Catholic Spirit Radio and Aquinas Communications. But yes, we're continuing the conversation after this break. How do you effectively communicate? Let us know, 877-757-9424. We'll see you right after this break on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.
Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm your host, Keith Downey, and we're talking the next right thing on effective communication and how can we do it? We got none other than Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai to help us do the next right thing. Take it away, Debbie and Adam.
We have some great communication going on in the chats and on our YouTube channel. So we're waving to everybody. You guys are awesome. Thank you for the kind words and comments, and you're liking this segment. And we do have Margaret on the line, Adam from Alexandria, Virginia. So, Adam, anything you wanted to share before we get to Margaret?
No, let's talk to her. That's great.
Okay. Hi, Margaret. Welcome to Morning Joy.
Hi, Debbie and Adam and Keith, and thanks, Tim. I just wanted to call in and say, love your show. Thank you for having this every morning. It's such a pleasure. But about communication, I work in communication, and it's a skill that you have to build. And when you were talking about technology, my personal experience was lots of people my age. I'm 28. And Keith, it's funny that you said geriatric millennial. I'm like, I feel like I'm there because I remember the Nokia days, but I was probably like 9 or 10. But anyway, the digital age makes it so hard to date because everybody uses apps, and they're using mainly Instagram, and specifically Catholics I see trying to find other faithful Catholics through Catholic social media. I personally had like a long distance relationship over social media, and it's just not enough to discern like whether or not a relationship is good for you. And you need that in-person interaction, and you need a lot of time spent together and in social situations specifically, so that there is accountability. If something goes wrong in communication, other people can see the situation and give more perspective. So that was just what I wanted to add to the conversation this morning. Again, thank you for having my call.
Did you want to share first, Keith?
No, yeah, that's great, Margaret. Yeah, long distance dating is a challenge. My wife and I, we lived about 2 hours away. Well, before she was my wife, when we were dating, so it was very intentional to spend as much time as we possibly could with that distance in mind. But I feel for all those single adults out there that are in this world of technology, in the world of apps, and that style of communication, because it really, it doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. Margaret, I wanted to ask you this question. Do you find that you have to really force, like your peers, your friends, do you have to force putting down all the gadgets? Like actually, when I was growing up, the computer and remember we had the pagers. There was first it was the pagers, and then we had the phones, the smartphones, and everything. It seemed like such a luxury, a prize, a gift. Nowadays, it's become something that everybody's just used to. You have to have it to survive, right? So do you have to force yourself out of that routine and say, okay, we're putting down all this stuff. We're removing it for a half hour, an hour, for dinner, for whatever. Is there anything you do on a regular basis to kind of disconnect from all the technology, Margaret?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And yes, to your question, I have to intentionally do that, because I literally will not hear someone talk to me right next to me if I'm looking at my screen. I mean, my sister and my mom joke about it all the time. They say, Margaret, and I'm not listening. I'm right 2 feet from them, but I'm looking at my screen, and it just tells you how sucked into these devices we are. Mm-hmm. And yes, you absolutely have to be intentional. And just like social skills, practicing that and the mindfulness does have to be intentional. You have to want to put the devices down. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what a lot of people struggle with, that they're bored and that they don't want to face reality. And I think that phones are an escape or a stimulation, and we're looking for something else. And for me, being mindful is like, in the morning, I won't look at my phone unless I've thanked God that I opened my eyes.
Right.
So,
right.
That's what I try to do. Just try to remember who I'm really supposed to be looking at and focusing my mind on, and the real image that I'm supposed to be looking at all the time isn't my phone screen.
Right. Margaret, before we let you go, I want to hear Adam's comments on your call. Adam?
Well, the key word was bored, I think. So some of the engineers that worked on social media in the very beginning who have left that industry have shared what we knew in psychology. Like, I was in graduate school when a lot of things were really getting refined, and that industry was poaching psychology professors that had expertise in some of these areas in terms of shaping behavior, stimulus response, timing of stimulus and response, in order to get the most kind of, what we tongue-in-cheek say dopamine hit, to get that burst of, ooh, somebody paid attention to me, but designed to get you locked into the phone and more engaged with it than other people, because their goal is to keep your eyes on advertisements, not for you to have a fulfilling life. And they did it so well because what they did is they borrowed directly from the psychological literature and all of the studies that were done on shaping the behavior of animals through stimulus response and the schedules that response and stimulus is on, they did it too well. And it became so unethical because in the pursuit of selling advertising eyeballs, people looking at ads, they kind of destroyed the next generation in terms of having genuine human experience, because it was so well tuned that it was more compelling than the people around you. As she said, even if you're 2 feet away and it's family members, literally it was so compelling she didn't hear her family members. And that's because they have used the psychological data and the literature, in my opinion, basically for evil, to exploit people and exploit their weaknesses in their biology and in their psychology. So we've kind of, because that industry wasn't regulated, it was allowed to go down this road pretty far.
Right.
And I think it's only now that, we're starting to reevaluate that and figure out how do we control this.
So, Adam, the segment is The Next Right Thing, and Margaret's bringing up some really good information and experience of what she goes through. Same with me, Margaret. There's times that I'm on my phone and Marty is talking to me, and I'm half listening. I'll be really honest, and it's like I catch every fourth word or something, and I try to figure out what he's trying to say. But the next right thing, what do we do? I mean, should we, like Margaret's saying, make that intention each day to push that gadget aside for at least 30 minutes, an hour? Like, how do we detox from all this?
You really have to do that. You have to fast from your phone. If you can think of it as fasting, in the Catholic sense of penance. It isn't really a penance, but in a sense, you are giving up something, and it's going to feel painful to not have that stimulus. But you really have to fast from it because it is so well engineered and designed that you can't really half-heartedly use it.
Okay.
You have to give yourself actual breaks from it. And yes, do it intentionally. At the very least, shut it off when you're in Mass. Shut it off when you're going to take 10 minutes and pray during the day.
Right.
Or at least silence it and turn it face down or put it in a drawer. Give yourself a break because it will grab you and hold you. It's something you can't do halfway. You either have to do it or shut it off and get it out of your sight.
Okay. Well, we're going to give Margaret the last 30 seconds. What do you say, Margaret?
Thank you so much. Well, my only, like Keith said, it's kind of hard because for me, I have to use it for business. But yes, you have to intentionally put it down because as my friend Dallas, who I met, I was like, oh, do you have social media? And she was like, oh, no, it's the near occasion of sin for me. And I was blown away because I was like, wow, no one cares enough to do that except people who will maybe give up social media for Lent. But she said, no, social media in general is a near occasion, not even that it's the sin itself.
Wow.
But it's so tempting to be there that she won't even put herself there. So I was really respecting that. So just really take it seriously that it can lead you into serious sin, especially with all the generated ads that they have towards men and women that are just not appropriate that you can't stop seeing. Like you just can't avoid it being on the internet. So just it's good for you overall just to be away from it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Margaret, we're gonna revisit this topic again because obviously it sparked a lot of conversation, and we appreciate the call so very much. Thank you, Margaret, for calling in.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, God bless you. And Adam, safe travels to Houston. We'll see you soon, and we'll send it back to Keith.
Yeah, and speaking of, if you want to see more Debbie Georgianni and Adam Blai, well, there's two ways we can do it. One, the Spirit World. You can watch them, stream them, listen to them on the Spirit World to Saturday, tomorrow, or you can catch them in Houston if you're in the Houston area on also Saturday evening. Got to search grnonline.com, the events tab, Summer Speaker Series Houston. But coming up next, how well do you know Gregorian chant? We've got an expert on that subject coming right next on Morning Joy, where truth matters.
You're listening to Morning Joy, where truth matters.